and so it probably emerged that there was a deal made among Swedish political leaders that Sweden would join the European Union, but they would have to have a vote on whether or not they wanted to join the Eurozone because of the images that many of the European countries like Greece are in, are not fiscally responsible, that they're not as frugal and disciplined as the Swedes and so on. And of course, Sweden had its own financial crisis 30 years ago. That was the model for much of the world looking to understand what to do in 2008 when the global financial crisis happened. So there must have been some kind of deal made that the leaders of Sweden would not decide to do this unless the people of Sweden made a referendum on this. That was a decision made by the leaders of Sweden. What little reading I've done on this, a lot of Swedish elites are rueful or regretful that Sweden never really joined the Eurozone, because Sweden does have this reputation of being something like a role model of an efficient, effective state, and that it would have even more soft power influence. This little country that 300 years ago had been a European great power, but has never, after being a small country, it of course faded to become a minor player in international affairs. But that Sweden, in the new world we live in which economic competition, soft power supposedly, economic efficiency, sophisticated technology, that these are the most important factors in a country's influence in the world, that Sweden could play an even greater role in this world if it was part of the Eurozone. And but once this principle was established, there had to be a referendum in Sweden. The same is true regarding Norway. Norway has twice had referendums on whether or not to join the European Union, not the Eurozone. Norway is in NATO. It's in NATO because of its bad experience in World War II, that unlike Sweden, it was occupied by the Germans, invaded and occupied. And it's part of NATO from its founding, but it's not part of the European Union. And they have to have a referendum on whether to join the European Union. And the Norwegian leaders have pleaded to the Norwegian people to please approve joining the European Union, at least the establishment figures. And the Swedish voters vote no. And the claim was that one of the main reasons was that they thought that basically the Europeans wanted access to the Norwegians' rich oil and gas reserves in the ocean and make Norway such a prosperous country because it has these oil and gas reserves in the North Sea. And so they're stuck. So the question is that going to remain stuck forever? That there's no way Norway is ever going to join the European Union, or there's no way that Sweden's ever going to join the Eurozone, or Denmark will join the Eurozone. And well, Denmark did have a referendum. I mean, we talked about this earlier, that happened just a couple of days ago, that the Danish voters voted to get rid of their opt-out, that they had to participate in the common security and defense policy of the European Union as part of the Maastricht Treaty. For 30 years, they said, we're not going to participate in any kind of military aspects of the European Union, even though they're part of NATO. They've been part of NATO since the 50s. So I guess what I'm saying is that if I'm a realist political thinker, I would say that, well, if I'm the leaders of the country and there's an agreement among us that we have to have this happen, we'll find a way to make it happen. We have to. We've got this referendum requirement. We'll do something to get around it. What? I don't know. But that's individual level factor of analysis, and that requires that you know something about Sweden and Denmark and Norway, which I don't know beyond what I read about in the media reports. And this is the focus on domestic political strategy. But I can say, I think, that the incentives to join the Eurozone are increasing. The apparent costs of not being in the Eurozone, not to mention the European Union, are increasing, particularly now that we're moving away from oil and gas, for example. Norway is concerned about oil and gas, and Norway's punished by China because Norway plays an important role in awarding the Nobel Peace Prize, and the Norwegians gave the Nobel Peace Prize to a Chinese dissident. And the Chinese punished Norway by stopping Norway from selling exporting their fish products to China. And if Norway was in the European Union, Norway would have more leverage over the other countries in the European Union, if it was in the European Union, to use against China. And against, if Sweden were in the Eurozone, it would have more leverage dealing with Moscow, Beijing, Washington, Tegucigalpa, Kuala Lumpur, if it was in the Eurozone. Because everyone would know that it has a seat at the table in the European Central Bank. Of course, Sweden has a commissioner on the European Commission, so the European Commission oversees all the budgets of the member states, including those in the Eurozone and those outside of the Eurozone. And that's great. And so does Denmark as members of the European Union, but they're not in the Eurozone. Like their fellow Scandinavian country, Finland is in the Eurozone. And so, of course, they have influence over European monetary policy, but not as much as they would if they were formally responsible, and their voice has to be included in deciding what European monetary policy will be more directly and explicitly through a vote, which they don't have over European monetary policy. They have influence, but not on a formal vote over it, at least in the European Central Bank. So, okay, so before we forget, then let's go then back to who won the debate? So can you, let me make sure that I'm sharing that screen. So please decide who won the debate. You can vote on who won the debate here. And pro or con. And then we can also vote on, what's this? Wrong one, sorry. I got to get rid of some of these files here. Who won the debate? Okay, so there you can see the results on who won the debate, and of course, debater Anais should vote as well. Again, it's always anonymous, so I don't know anything about who's voting how. And then please also grade the debate, and here you can see grading the debate. And also pro presentation style, and get the bottom here, pro presentation style, con presentation style, there you can see con presentation style, and then pro and con use of weekly reading material, pro use of weekly reading material, and con use of weekly reading material here as well. And you can vote on this until 11 o'clock, so 7 more minutes if you haven't done it yet. So, all right, so then I guess in the time remaining, let me open up some files here and to cover the time remaining. So we go to European Politics Society, just a second here. We'll share screen. And okay, so yeah, so the so again, I mean, I keep coming back to these topics we've been covering. This current crisis regarding the Ukraine and Russia is another crisis which is having a big impact, good and bad, on the European Union. And I think what I wanted to highlight here is what is the sources of Russian belligerency? What is the source of Russian use of deadly force? Is Russia using deadly force because it sees a tremendous opportunity? If it does see this opportunity, towards whom? And I did argue in a previous class that Russia sees opportunity insofar as it sees opportunity with regard to Ukraine, but that's derivative from perceived threat from the United States, that Russia will establish its great power equality with the United States by dominating Ukraine. And I said there's a historical analog with that, with how the Austro-Hungarian Empire viewed Serbia as a source of derivative opportunity to demonstrate Austria-Hungary's equality with Germany and Russia and Britain by beating up Serbia, not Sweden, Serbia in 1914. After Serbia gave them an excuse by having a role in executing, killing their crown prince. And I suggest that this is what a hypothesis that I would suggest is happening with regard to Ukraine. In other words, if you want to come up with a peace strategy for the war in Ukraine, you're not going to focus just on Ukraine. Russia's problems with the United States. Ukraine is derivative of that perceived challenge from the United States. So, we highlighted in the previous class how Henry Kissinger raised his voice and said that Ukraine should be prepared to allocate some portion of territory towards Russia to come up with a peace settlement. And that's not enough, because Russia's problem is not primarily with Ukraine. Russia's problem is primarily with the United States. That the perceived stereotype is the United States, through its evil machinations as the American global empire, pulling the strings, is using Ukraine to undermine and destroy Russia. And I'm not saying that's accurate, but is that the prevailing view? As crazy as it sounds, does Russia stereotype the United States as the evil empire? Does Russia think it's trying to contain the United States by invading Ukraine, as America strives supposedly for its Eurasian supremacy and hegemony, with Russia the last bastion against American domination of Eurasia on its way to controlling the world? So here's how the Russian media, and this is from BBC monitoring former Soviet Union. This is really nice. This is only available, however, if you have access to ProQuest Central, which we no longer have at this university because it's too expensive as a subscription. But I have access to it through my own resources, my own means. And I guess maybe I think I even have it open here. Like here's well, it's probably what I mean here. So let me see if I can show you this. This is ProQuest. So if I go to publications, and I probably no longer logged in, so it's probably a waste of time. So BBC monitoring. So former Soviet Union is how it's. So the BBC, they survey the world's media, and they select items that they think are really important and publish every day their English translations of important websites and statements. So you can see this is the daily report from the BBC for the former Soviet Union. You can see it's heavily focused on Ukraine. So 45, so you got to go through this every day. And this is necessary to do if you're going to be a serious scholar of the former Soviet Union. You can't just read New York Times. You got to read the local media. And it's in Russian, it's in English, of course. And so I found this. This is how Russian media is responding to Kissinger's suggestion. But this is from the progress of Russia's special operation, Ukraine, the Western impact on the events was discussed on a talk show on the official state Rossiya 1 television. The 29 May edition of the Voskresny Večer in Vladimirem Soloveyovem, Sunday evening with Vladimir Soloveyov, lasted just over 3 hours. So this is the translation of the text of the dialogue. But a project of the new global order is also being developed in Ukraine with prerequisites in place for it to be favorable for Russia, so that Kissinger mentality prevailed in the heads of Western politicians, Morozov said, in reference to comments made by veteran US politician Henry Kissinger about the need to appease Russia. He had that Russia's counting on the capitulation of Ukraine's leadership. In other words, they're saying this is all part of the American plan to subordinate Russia by giving Russia some crumbs from the table. So, but Russia will then submit in America's evil plan and design to manipulate Ukraine, to offer some crumbs to Russia so that Russia will be satisfied at getting what it wants as part of, well, meanwhile, it continues to be a second-rate at best actor in the world under the benign hegemon, the United States. Again, the focus is not Ukraine. So a peace strategy for this war requires addressing Russia's perceptions of the United States and the role of the United States in the world. And that's why I've been suggesting, this focus or a need to focus on, for example, the role of the European Union as being perceived as a genuinely independent actor from Washington, which has miserably failed to generate in the prevailing view in Moscow. Even though Germany and France are saying, really, we should come up with a peace plan for Ukraine. We need to, and the United States is saying, no, we must not appease Russia, and so on. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that. But I think there is another class here at 11 o'clock, so I need to get out of here. So that's it for today, okay?